It is time for Streetwise with former chief of the New York City Sheriff's Department, former chief of the Seagate Police Department, retired New York City detective, Time Warner Public Access Media Award, Joe Franklin Super Excellence in Broadcasting Memory Lane Award, New York Veteran Police Association Streetwise Productions, host of Streetwise, Mr. Lou Telano.
I'm here.
Okay, good. I got you. We did the intro, and somehow we just with little technical problem. Anyway, this is Lou Telano, and my guest this evening is a renowned psychologist, professor, author, journalist. He received his PhD in psychology at Harvard University. Former editor-in-chief of Psychology Today, great magazine, folks, and I think he was the editor-in-chief from 1999 to 2003. Author of, who correct me if I'm wrong, my research tells me, speaking of research, which he's a great researcher, I found 15 books. His latest books is, we'll talk about in a moment, about a lot of us could use today, but not me, thank God. I don't have any teenagers. That was years ago. Okay. Welcome to Streetwise, Dr. Robert Epstein.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Oh, okay. Now, interesting. You had a radio show yourself on Sirius XM for about, I think, 3 or 4 years, correct?
Yes, I did. And before that, I had one of the first internet talk shows. There was a network. The first internet talk show network was called IATA, and I had one of those shows on that very first network too. So I love radio.
Oh, well, good. So why did we lose you? We could use you. Why? I watch your interviews and interesting and your knowledge. Well, how do we get you back? Is to be a radio talk show host again? Or you
make me an offer.
Oh, okay. Make you know. Very good. That's sure. A great answer. Okay, I'll pass that around, by the way. Folks, I just want to tell you some of the guests that Dr. Robert Epstein has interviewed. I'll just touch on a few of them. Laura Bush, that's George W. Bush's second Bush, or Bush Jr., some people call him, is the First Lady. Jimmy Carter is a president that I would like to forget, but I'm saying that, not my guess. Tipper Gore, and you had Jamie Lee Curtis on, but did she tell you her real name is Jamie Lee Schwartz?
No. Her name is actually Curtis. It's her dad changed his name. Tony Curtis changed his name, but her name
correct.
Is really Curtis. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I know. Of course, he's from my old neighborhood, Lower East Side, and we went to the same high school, but he was in front of me, way ahead of me. Right. And we knew him as, of course, his father had a tailor shop on the Lower East Side. We knew him as Bernie Schwartz.
Sure.
Which you know. Okay, before there's a heavy subject that I do want to touch on, and but I have to ask you this: why did you? You said you're definitely a scientist, and from what I can see. How did you get into? Why did you choose to be, I guess, a research psychologist? And why you have such a great interest in that?
Well, it just caught my attention in college. I was too lazy to do all the homework in my math and physics classes, and psychology not only was it interesting to me, but it involved a lot less homework.
Really? Oh.
So I just got kind of caught up in the field. I mean, it is interesting because it's about why we all do and think and say what we do and think and say.
Right.
And that's interesting to everyone. We're all psychologists in a sense.
Yeah, not to brag, but I call myself a street psychologist. So I don't have your degrees, but dealing with people for so many years, and I could pretty much, and which you're very familiar with, use a lot of body language, which is very, I think, extremely helpful in my police work, in my other life. So,
well, law enforcement officers, they're supposedly very, very good at detecting lies as well, and that's a real skill.
Yes. Speaking of lies, I have to talk about this. We have a witness, whistleblower, I guess, allegedly to testify in regard to the impeachment, or the Democratic side has putting together an impeachment process. Now, this so-called whistleblower, from what I see, it's from what they gave us, it's like hearsay. But if they were a legitimate, say, witness to what they're alleging, how would you be able to determine if that witness, he or she, is credible?
Well, in this case, we don't have to look very hard, because President Trump, actually released a detailed summary of the call in question, right. And the detailed summary confirms exactly what the whistleblower was saying. So we don't have to look very far for confirmation.
Oh, so then actually we don't even need that person if that's what we could judge by. We may not.
It's possible we don't need that person at all. That's right.
So in other words, his statement. He would, some people, when I say some people, I sound like Omar, Congresswoman Omar, some people, might interpret that as a high crime or misdemeanor, or what's your thoughts on that? Or evidence or something they can use for an impeachment. To me, it's just a normal conversation that I think presidents have done forever. Your thoughts on that, Dr. Epstein?
Well, these days, everyone thinks while they're wearing a badge that says what party they support. So there's so much partisanship that it's very hard to think clearly about these issues. I'm with the founders. I'm with Thomas Jefferson. I'm with George Washington, who vehemently, vigorously opposed having a two-party system in the United States. They said it would lead to strife. It would lead to faulty thinking. It would cause conflict. They said, for as long as this country exists. And unfortunately, they lost that argument, and we now have a two-party system. And everyone at this point just believes what the party line is. All I can say regarding the issue you've raised is the whistleblower complaint is important in one sense, and that caused some discussion, and that caused the White House to release this detailed summary of the phone conversation. And now we kind of have to go from there. I mean, there is no question that the president did repeatedly ask the president of the Ukraine to investigate the Bidens. So that's now a matter of fact. Now,
correct. Whether
that's an impeachable offense, well, as you know, impeachment in this country is really a subjective matter. Yeah. It's entirely subjective, and the House is controlled by the Democrats, so they might in fact impeach him. The Republicans control the Senate, so they will not remove him from office, and that'll be that.
So we're wasting, again, like the Mueller hearings, we're wasting all this time, money, and energy, pretty much. And
unfortunately, the real criminal here, in my opinion, is partisanship.
Yes.
The criminal is having a two-party system, which, again, was vehemently opposed by both George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson used to make jokes about it. I mean, he thought it was, he thought that he would forego going to heaven if it involves joining a political party.
Wow. Amazing. Interesting. Okay, I want to bring up this important thing that you went before the U.S. Senate in regard how big tech or high tech not only can manipulate an election, they already have manipulated the 2016 presidential election, which was pretty much in the benefit of Hillary Clinton. I watched you being interviewed. For the people that did not see, by the way, Professor Dr. Robert Epstein testify, it's mind-boggling. And you talk about, like, your next book is about, it's going to include Google, and that was pretty much the blunt of what you were discussing. Now, how can big tech manipulate a election, and especially a presidential election, Dr. Epstein?
Well, first of all, I just a very slight correction here. I've never said that Google manipulated the election. That's not what I said. What I said was that my research, which I've been doing now for almost 7 years, shows without any doubt at all that Google has the power to shift millions of votes without people knowing. So that's what my experimental research shows.
Correct.
And then I've set up monitoring systems to look over people's shoulders in the months and days leading up to the 2016 election and the 2018 election. And basically, when I've looked over people's shoulders and when they've been conducting election-related searches on Google, Bing, and Yahoo, what I've found is there's a very considerable pro-liberal bias in Google search results, but not in Bing and Yahoo. And that bias in Google search results was enough in 2016 to have shifted to Hillary Clinton somewhere between 2.6 and 10.4 million votes, with no one having the slightest idea that they've been manipulated, and without leaving a paper trail for authorities to trace. So I've not said Google manipulated these elections. What I've said is I've measured bias in Google search results enough to have shifted a tremendous number of votes, both in 2016 and 2018 as well.
All right, then I got to stand corrected. I looked at that; it was a manipulation, because if they were able to do that, they were able, in my opinion. But you're 100% correct, of course. How were you able to look over their shoulders, Dr. Epstein?
Well, in these monitoring systems, which are the only two monitoring systems so far that have ever been set up anywhere in the world, I did what the Nielsen company has been doing since 1950. I secretly recruited field agents. Nielsen recruits families, of course. And did in 2016, I recruited 95 field agents in 24 states. They were all registered voters. They were politically diverse. And then installed special software on their computers with their permission that allowed my team basically to collect data to look over their shoulders while they were conducting election-related searches on Google, Bing, and Yahoo. So in other words, we had a stream of data coming in 24/7 from the computers of our field agents, and we were able to preserve these searches. Now, normally, they're not preserved. They just when you're doing a search for something on Google, you type in a search term, you get your search results, right? And then you click on a link, and the search results are gone. They disappear. They're not preserved anywhere. The term that people at Google use is they're ephemeral. Ephemeral. It's one of those $2 words, that that says a lot. Ephemeral means, this content appears before your eyes. It's generated just for you, generated on the fly just for you. And then it impacts you, and then it disappears, and it's gone forever. And you can't go back in time and reconstruct it. So I built monitoring systems to preserve ephemeral content, to preserve ephemeral experiences. And it turns out that those ephemeral experiences, as my research shows, they can shift opinions on any issue. They can shift votes, purchases, beliefs, attitudes. And the people at Google know this. They know this, and they use this power deliberately. One of the leaks to the Wall Street Journal last year was an email in which someone at Google said, "Hey guys, how can we use ephemeral experiences to shift people's opinions about Trump's travel ban?" So people within Google, they know they have this power, and they use this power, and I'm the first one anywhere to have measured this power quite precisely and to have built monitoring systems to catch them,
Wow.
to catch, to preserve these ephemeral experiences and catch Google basically shifting opinions and votes. But I don't say I've never said they manipulated these elections. That's a little different.
That's still heavy. I know that was heavy on my part. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I go pretty far, but I don't go that far.
Okay. Okay. But they were able to shift votes. Let's use your term. They're able to shift votes because one of the things you did say is that they'll target, for an example, an independent voter or someone that hasn't decided, and they could somehow shift that vote to where they want it to go. Am I correct on that?
Yes, in fact, you've really raised a key point. The people who are most vulnerable to this kind of manipulation, this kind of influence, I should say, are the people who are undecided, the people who are independent. They haven't yet made up their mind. And I've shown in controlled experiments that biased search results can easily shift 20% or more of undecided voters up to 80% in some demographic groups. So this is not a subtle effect. This is an extremely powerful form of influence, and there's some creepy aspects to it. Number one, people can't see the bias in search rankings, so they can't see the bias. So in other words, this is a subliminal kind of influence. And what's even creepier is the very, very tiny number of people who can see the bias, who spot the bias, they notice the bias, they shift even farther in the direction of the bias. So merely being able to detect the bias doesn't protect you from it at all.
So they can go beyond that, in other words.
That's right.
Yeah, they can go.
So the point is that Google, I calculated based on the level of bias that I measured in 2018, I calculated that Google might have shifted in 2018 upwards of 78.2 million votes.
Wow.
Now, that was a midterm election, so those votes would have been spread across hundreds of elections nationwide. But still, that's a lot of votes. Now, in 2020, I've calculated that if Google and the other big tech companies like Google, if they all support the same candidate, between them, they can shift 15 million votes to one presidential candidate with no one having the slightest idea that they did so, and again, without leaving a paper trail.
Wow. Now, you went before the U.S. Senate. Actually, what was their response when you just this was your analysis, this was your findings? What was what are they going to do about it?
Yeah, for the most part, their response was partisan. And, of course, that's the problem. That's in my opinion, that's the real criminal in Washington now, is partisanship itself. Because, the Republicans, obviously, they were paying very close attention, and Senator Ted Cruz, who chaired the committee, he was, very interested in what I was saying, and he had me repeat things, to make it clear what I was saying, and he praised me quite a bit, and the Republicans on that committee were all pretty much saying that they were interested. They were interested, and they believed every word I said, but the Democrats did not. Now, why is that? That's because these companies in Silicon Valley are huge donors to the Democrats. Google was Hillary Clinton's largest donor in 2016. And it's because, in general, these tech companies support Democrats. So the Democrats don't want to hear what I'm saying, even though what I'm saying is true, even though, again, the methods I use, they meet the very highest standards of scientific integrity. And even though I myself am not a conservative, I was a Hillary Clinton supporter, still the Democrats do not want to hear what I'm saying. And Hillary herself, for just recently, falsely stated to her 25 million Twitter followers that my work has been debunked. That is false. My work has never been debunked.
Oh boy! So what was your response on that on your Twitter page? On your Twitter, I should say.
Well, I mean, I have a few thousand followers. I can't reach her 25 million
I know that's
followers.
True. Okay. Well,
so I can't have a real debate with her on Twitter because she's got 25 million followers. I have 72,000 followers. So
is that amazing? I think. What can you give us an example how they do that? How does Google search? How do they able to shift an undecided voter to vote for the candidate they want? How would they do that?
They have a lot of options, and I've been studying now 7 of them very, very carefully, and I've discovered about 12 or so methods that these companies have available to them. But one of the simplest techniques is to flash search suggestions at you. You know, when you start to type a search term and they flash some suggestions at you, that's called autocomplete. And one of the simplest ways they can support a candidate is to suppress negative search suggestions for their candidate, but to allow negative suggestions to appear for the other candidate. So in 2016, for example, if you typed Hillary Clinton is on Bing or Yahoo, you got a long list of phrases like Hillary Clinton is the devil, Hillary Clinton is sick, Hillary Clinton is, evil, and so on. That's what you got on Bing and Yahoo, long lists like that. And that's what people were actually searching for. But if you typed Hillary Clinton is on Google, what you got was Hillary Clinton is winning, Hillary Clinton is awesome. That's it. That's all you got. So that, it turns out, is a very simple way to shift votes among undecided people. We've shown in experiments that just by manipulating those search suggestions that you flash at people, we can turn a 50-50 split among undecided voters into a 90-10 split with no one knowing they have been influenced.
As a renowned psychologist, so were you saying that we're getting the message, but we don't realize, but we're getting the message? It's, I don't know, is that hypnosis or something similar?
Well, it's definitely subliminal in the sense that people don't realize they're being influenced. Here's the way it works, by the way. If someone types in Donald Trump is, and they show you a list of search terms, and one of those search terms, even one, if one of those search terms is negative, so Donald Trump is an idiot, let's say.
Right.
If they let that kind of negative term appear on a list, negative search terms draw 10 to 15 times as many clicks as positive ones do. This is a well-known phenomenon in the social sciences. It's called negativity bias. Some people call it the cockroach in the salad phenomenon because, if you've got this big, beautiful salad in front of you, but there's a little cockroach in the middle, all of your attention is drawn to the cockroach.
Right.
Right. And you don't want to eat the salad. So, same is true with these search suggestions. So that's one of the ways Google can shift a lot of votes with no one having any idea that they're being manipulated. Now, of course, then there's the search results down below. If those are biased, meaning a high-ranking result takes you to a web page that makes one candidate look a lot better than the other, well, people believe the search results that are at the top of the list.
Yeah.
And they think that these results are impartial and objective because they were generated by a computer. So that shifts opinions. Sometimes Google now shows you these boxes at the top of the search page. They're called answer boxes, or they're called featured snippets, in which they just answer your question, period. Well, we've shown in experiments that if there's bias in the answer box, the answer they give you to your question, that also shifts votes and opinions. So there's lots of ways to do this. I can give you one example that is just, to me, it's mind-boggling. On on Election Day in 2018, so I'm doing the midterm election, back to there. Election Day in 2018 on Google's homepage, and they replaced the word Google, that big colorful word Google, they replaced it with the words "Go vote."
Go vote. Very good.
In flashy colors. And everyone praised the company that day. They said, "Isn't that great? Google is doing a public service. They're trying to get people out to vote, get them off their sofas, so to speak."
Yes.
And get them to vote. I saw that on Election Day in 2018, and I said, "Wait a minute. That's not a public service. That's a vote manipulation." And I published an article showing all the calculations, which I'm sure Google did the same way I did. Google knows that a lot more Democrats, a lot more left-leaning people would have seen that message that day. That's a demographics effect. So I showed in my calculations that go vote reminder that day gave at least 800,000 more votes to Democrats than to Republicans.
Well,
that is a vote manipulation.
Why would go vote direct people to one particular party? It says just go vote. Because when I do that, I remind people to vote every election when elections come up. Most of us do.
Well, every single day in the United States, people frequently visit Google's homepage to conduct a search, right?
Correct.
And so that's seen every day about 500 million times by Americans. But Google knows that more of the people, there are more Democrats who will see that homepage than Republicans. It's that difference, the fact that more Democrats get the reminder to go vote than Republicans. That's what leads to that difference in the number of voters. That leads to an extra number of Democrat votes compared to Republican votes. And that's if they show that go vote reminder to everyone. What if they just show it mainly to Democrats because they know who's Democrat and who's Republican?
Yes.
What if they show it mainly to Democrats? First of all, we wouldn't even know they're doing it. We'd have no way of knowing that they're showing it mainly to Democrats or mainly to people leaning left.
Yeah.
So I showed in my calculations that if they showed this just to Democrats and they withheld it from Republicans, so Republicans are just seeing the word Google and Democrats are seeing the words go vote, then the Democrats would get about 4.6 million more votes that day than the Republicans would get. And Google knows this. They do the calculations just like I do.
Amazing. Could this be considered a great, a marketing type of tool that they have? They can say, well, this is our marketing thing. That's how we market. Because people, which we hire people to market certain things, and we do target particular and certain groups.
That's right. In fact, all marketers do targeting. You're quite right. There's no question about that. But under law in the United States, if you do any kind of marketing or targeting that supports one party or supports one candidate, you're supposed to declare that if it has a financial value over a certain amount of money. If you fail to declare it, you're breaking the law. And in this case, these very subtle ways in which Google supports one party or supports one candidate, they can be considered violations of campaign finance laws in the United States.
Yes. So what do we expect in 220 then? If they've done this in 216, 218, and with and you're out there speaking of whistleblowers, you're letting people know about this, and what would it affect them? What they say, just don't give it them. They're just going to do their go vote reminder again to America.
Well, remember these manipulations of theirs are invisible. So if there are no monitoring systems in place, then they'll get away with it, and then they will shift they'll shift millions of votes. We'll never know they did it, and we will never truly understand, why we have the winner that we have. Now, I have been trying to raise funds to set up a much bigger, much more comprehensive, much more aggressive monitoring system than I've set up before to run in 2020. Will I get the money? I don't know. I mean, Glenn Beck on the air just a couple days ago, I was on his show, and he said to his listeners, I want you guys to send money to Epstein's Research Institute. Then he said he wanted me to send him a letter, and he wants to send this letter, he said, to all the talk show hosts in the country, which would include you. And he said he wants to have a day when all the talk show hosts go on the air and raise money so that I can set up a very large scale monitoring project. And again, that was Glenn Beck's doing. Dennis Prager, another very prominent talk show host, he's holding an event in October to try to raise money for this monitoring system. All I can say is that if this system gets set up, whether I do it or someone else does it, then we'll have some protection, because we will be able to spot bias. We'll be able to spot manipulations, any kind of irregularities. We'll spot them, we'll record them, we'll preserve the data. If there are no monitoring systems in place, we'll never know what happened. We'll never know what hit us. And let me tell you that the best possible result of setting up a big comprehensive monitoring system would be that these companies just back off, and they don't mess with our election, and we actually have a free and fair election.
Talking about the tech companies, obviously, the big tech companies.
Big tech companies, exactly.
Yeah.
That would be a real success on my part. If we get a big monitoring system going, we announce that it's running, and we find that these systems, that these companies, these tech companies, are showing fair results, that they've backed off, that they're not trying to influence anybody. That would be, in my opinion, a great success, and it would mean that we've protected the free and fair election, and that we protected democracy.
Well, folks, we all want to protect democracy. Dr. Robert Epstein, give us a contact information, how we can donate, and I'm going to use the word donate, to help you put this monitoring system together, because we definitely need it. How would someone want to do that? If they want to be a volunteer or contribute funds to your monitoring system, which I think we desperately need. Where would they go?
I appreciate that very much, that you're helping in this way. I don't know what to say. I'm very, very appreciative. If your listeners, your viewers want to help in this project, want to support this project financially or otherwise,
correct,
or they just want to learn more about my research, they can go to mygoogleresearch.com. Just mygoogleresearch.com, and that'll take you to a page where again you can donate, or there are links there to dozens and dozens of articles that I've written on the subject, to my research papers. There's also a link there to my congressional testimony. I testified back in July, and there is a link to my congressional testimony. I think it's the 7-minute video. And then you can get a link also to a kind of 15-minute give and take between me and Senator Ted Cruz, because I say he did take a very strong interest in what I'm doing.
Well, that's on the YouTube. Well, you probably know that. That's on the YouTube right now while we're speaking.
No, I didn't. I did not know that. The links that I have are to
it actually shows you and Ted Cruz having the conversation with you. When I saw that, and that's why I asked you that question before we went on the air. I did asked Dr. Robert Epstein if he was subpoenaed or was a volunteer, and he told me he volunteered, and I thought that was great because America has to know that. We don't know that. Well, I was at election night at the Hilton Hotel in New York because I'm a member of the press, and I seen the press, which we all know. It really was my first indication, real big indication, that the press was doing exactly what you're talking about. What they're doing, something that was invisible, but it was visible because they were lying in our face. They were telling us, as an example, Hillary is leading in Virginia. And they forget that we all have iPhones today, if you're out there. We just compared it while we're there, and we saw Trump was ahead in Virginia. And then it caused a little ruckus there with the audience that were there and the press, because everything the press was doing that night, well, actually, like Donald Trump would say, we were getting fake news in our face. It wasn't even invisible; it was visible, and which they're still doing now, obviously. So
well, again, in my opinion, the real criminal in Washington D.C. is partisanship itself. That is my opinion. It's not the Democrats or the Republicans, in my opinion. It is partisanship itself. Again, our founding fathers fought hard to make sure that we did not have a two-party system. And we ended up with one, and we've been suffering the consequences ever since. It's you realize, I'm sure, that a lot of families are fighting amongst themselves because half of them support Trump and half of them don't. And so we're talking about a couple hundred years of unclear thinking and of conflict because we have this crazy two-party system, which both Thomas Jefferson and George Washington opposed strongly. I mean, they fought as hard as they could. It was only after Washington died that Hamilton and some others, finally put this two-party system in place and They basically formed another party, and that's, in my opinion, that is the cause of many of the difficulties that we have in the United States.
Well, I don't, truthfully, and I'm sure you know this, Dr. Robert Epstein, I don't think that's going to happen. It's too political. It's too heavy duty. It's going to be a one person or two people, an important someone like you that does tremendous research. The way the politicians are, they just want to keep what they have.
Right.
My analysis of both sides of the aisle, that they have a love-hate relationship. So, and it'll never happen. They'll stick together on that. So it'd be great. It would be great to do that. But it'll be kind of tricky. But the point you brought up before, it's the first time in my lifetime that I've seen families like you had mentioned, family, friends, not even talking to each other, discussing things to each other because of, and I have to say this, I've never seen this happen with any other president than Donald Trump, where families are arguing. We just, you're voting for that way, you're voting that way, fine. Where I was born and raised, you just went down the line, you voted Democrat because that's the way it was, Well,
look at it another way. You and I are having a good, solid discussion here, and we obviously respect each other. And you and I have different politics,
right?
But we are talking to each other. We're talking to each other with respect, and that has been largely lost in the United States.
Correct.
In my opinion, that partisanship has gotten much worse under Trump. Now, between you and me and the wall here, I mean, I actually know people in the Trump family, and so I have no problems with individual members of that family, not at all. But this presidency, though, has caused a lot of divisiveness, in my opinion, in this country. And we need more of what you and I are doing. Because I've been on Dennis Prager's show, Mark Levin's show. Mark Levin and I have very different politics. I mean, I've always been center or leaned left my whole life.
I know.
But, I can have relationships with people and we can respect each other and talk to each other, but that is not happening anymore in our Congress. So how do we get anything done?
Well, it looks like we're not. Congress right now is just focusing on just impeachment. Everything else there's no concern. The border, unemployment, climate control. I mean, it's just a passing thing. They're just doing. I don't know. Should we? Folks, I just want you to know, Dr. Robert Epstein is not. What he's talking about, he's coming out. This is his research. I feel you are or were, and still are, I should say, a liberal Democrat. That would be my analysis of you. But you're doing what you think is right. That's what my determination. That's my analysis. That's my research, and that's what I try to do. People call me, "Hey Lou," I've been called right winger on my shows, all the way to the right. I just have to, and I'm going to repeat this again. I support Donald Trump. I worked for Rudy Giuliani. It seems I do support Republican candidates for whatever reason. I'm not a registered Republican. I've never been a registered Republican. So people say, well, you're knocking yourself out. With Trump, you must be a real right wing. I says, first of all, I don't even know what that means. I really can't determine what that means. But I appreciate what you said. It's we lack that now. See, when I do a show, I don't call an interview. I call a conversation. And I'm glad you had mentioned Dr. Robert Epstein. Folks, I just want to repeat this. MyGoogleResearch.com. Is that correct, Dr. Robert Epstein?
That is absolutely correct.
All
yes,
right.
sir.
I'm going to repeat that after you leave, which I know you have to go now. So, because you had said that. Summing up, do you think, how can you before the Senate committee, what was the name of that committee anyway that you went before the Senate? Is there,
that was the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Judiciary Committee. And, but what shows, folks, that Dr. Epstein is impartial. He had said was a Hillary supporter, even though this indicates that his research indicated that it was pretty much supporting Hillary Clinton. So how do we get people like you, and I'm going to include me into this, how do we do that? I mean, what I do is I back out. We mentioned family, kids and grandkids, they're on one side, I'm on the other side, so I don't even have the conversation. I don't even have the discussion on it, But they'll listen to my show and they'll get a little angry at me, but I just let it go. So, I'm
sure you agree with me. We've got to get past this. We have to get back to a time when there's mutual respect and good communication. If you're not communicating and there's no respect, you can't move forward. And that's where we are right now. We're kind of stuck as a country. This is what I told Congress when I testified. I said, I'm not a conservative. Okay, I'm not a registered Democrat, but I'm sure as heck not a conservative, and I lean left.
Right.
I said, but I value our country. I value democracy. I value the free and fair election more than I value any particular party or candidate. I said, that's why I'm speaking out. And, we all have to get into that frame of mind where we put the country first and democracy first, ahead of any particular partisan, leanings that we might have. We've got to be talking to each other. We've got to respect each other, or this country is going to go downhill. I mean, there's going to be, anything is possible. We could have a civil war, another civil war, if we don't learn to talk to each other.
I'm afraid that if Donald Trump, for whatever reason, gets impeached, I think there are going to be some heavy-duty demonstrations.
I think there could be violence, of course. Yeah.
That's exactly what I mean. I didn't want to go that far. I think there will be, and I hate to use the word revolution, So, but I could see that on Twitter, which you look at and I do, some of the people are saying if he gets impeached, keep your powder dry.
Yeah.
So scary. It is scary. So I don't know. I just mind-boggling. Anyway, I know you have to go, Dr. Robert Epstein. I want to wish you a good day. Spell it for me, Jason. Rosh Hashanah?
Yes, Rosh Hashanah, that's right.
Good day, Rosh Hashanah. Happy New Year, that folks in Yiddish. So, okay. So, folks, remember, mygoogle.research.com. Doctor, a great pleasure having this conversation with you, Dr. Robert Epstein. What can I tell you? I don't want to be repetitive, and they usually say, keep up the good work, but no one has to tell you that because you seem to do it on your own. Thank you for being the guest of Streetwise.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate your interest, and I appreciate the fact that you're willing to talk to someone of with different political views, with real respect and listening carefully, and that's what we all need to do, in my opinion.
Well, I respect you, and I respect what you're doing. It's very simple, folks. Thanks, Dr. Robert
Thank you, sir.
Epstein.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Folks, isn't that amazing? His research, it's almost like a hypnotic. They'll flash something in front of your face. When I say very high tech, Google. He testified before the Congress, and I don't know where that's going to go. He was saying, and he has the data to back it up, how Hillary Clinton got millions and millions of votes in regard to manipulating you just by seeing a flash go before your face. But I can understand that. It's like when a commercial comes on, they raise the volume up, on these commercials, and it just wakes you up and it makes you listen to it. But I have to tell you this: they do some great commercials out there that sometimes it's better than the show you're watching. So, but that was good. I just have to say that I'm gonna go on my Twitter, and we do need a monitoring system because there was a lot of shenanigans. I don't know if anybody uses that term anymore, in regard to the voting system that we have here in this country. I seen it firsthand in New York. I was able to get evidence on it in regard to and I mentioned this before, when Rudy Giuliani ran against David Dinkins. I was honored to be Rudy Giuliani's law enforcement liaison, and so I did some research. I documented everything, pretty much like Dr. Robert Epstein is doing. And I went to the Board of Health, got copies of death certificates, went to certain cemeteries to take pictures with an old Polaroid. We don't have these phones then. So a little camera, took pictures of the gravestones, and then we go to the Board of Elections, and guess what, folks? I've never seen this. It's a miracle. A miracle. Dead people voted twice against Rudy Giuliani. So it was just amazing. We had so much of it, and it's plus. By the way, they say if you're a 3-time loser, the term means if you've been in jail 3 times for 3 felonies, you cannot vote. Do you believe that, folks? When were you at an election school or whatever where you vote and you've seen somebody do a background check on anybody or take their fingerprints or run them through the system to see if they were arrested at any time? That's a fallacy too. That's just an old cliche. Hey, you can't vote. You lose your voting rights. How do you lose your voting rights? Who checks on you when you go vote, right? So that's my concern, is that these illegal aliens are going to start voting in this 220 election. And that's why, in my opinion, the Democratic Party was trying to get them in. And that's why, like Bernie Sanders wants criminals to vote. Forget about being a 3-time loser. He wants them to put a voting booth up in the prison so they can vote in prison. I guess that's the end of my show, folks. I just want you to know, down the road, I got Donnie Brasco. If you remember him, there was a movie. He's coming on. He was a famous undercover cop. He's my guest in the future. Sheriff Joe Arpaio is going to be my guest. He's running back for his old job as sheriff in Arizona. So, and a few other good, high-profile, great guests that I usually have. I'm going to pat myself on on the back. And by the way, folks, Paradise Studios, I'm on Strong Island TV, and I'm sure you'll see me on the YouTube tonight, and you'll see me next week at Strong Island TV at Paradise Studios. Thanks for listening and watching Streetwise. This is Lou Telano, and I'll catch you later.